Session. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd ask the council to authorize the city attorney to hire outside counsel to address the personnel matter. Funding source to be council contingency.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Anything else? Do we have a second? We have a motion and second to adjourn. No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. On the agenda, as always, is the roll call and determination of the quorum. Amber, if you would, please.
Wah? Here. Martinson? Here. Quaker?
Here.
Costello? LaCroix?
Here.
Chapman? Olson? Here. Weifenbach? Here. Roger? Here. Hadcock? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you have a cell phone or a pager, if you please turn that off or put it in the vibrate mode, we'd certainly appreciate it. Also, if you wish to speak to any issue on the agenda tonight, we do have speaker request forms. If you look like this, they're to your left or right over on the media table. If you please fill that out with your name and the item number, that we, as we make our way through the agenda, we'll make sure that we do not overlook you. With that, next thing is invocation. If everyone would please rise for a moment of silence, and we followed that with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Next thing on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do we need to have any additional items added to tonight's agenda? If so, please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. No questions? I had your light on. Okay, let's go out to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add an 81A report on strengthening families task force.
Families, got that. That's 81A. That's Lloyd. Any additional? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add an item called 81B, clarification on the budgeted salary increases for 2010.
Got it. And Deb, your light's on again. Did you have something?
Yeah, sorry. Mine is Christmas lights hanging, volunteers.
So we'll call that 81C, Christmas lights. Any additional items to be added to tonight's agenda? If not, the chair will look for a motion to adopt the agenda as printed with the addition of 81A, B, and C.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to the approval of the minutes. Chair would look for a motion to approve the minutes from the September 21st, 2009 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now is the time for awards and recognitions. And if Scott, where'd you go, Scott? Why don't you go ahead and come up front and I'll read the proclamation. There we go. It's always a pleasure to recognize those organizations that truly contribute to the quality of life in Rapid City. And tonight we have such an honor, and what we'd like to do is recognize Habitat for Humanity. And I'd like to read this executive proclamation where it reads, whereas the first Monday of October is designated as World Habitat Day, a day to call attention to the dire need for affordable housing for all, And whereas each person touched by Habitat for Humanity, whether a homeowner, volunteer, or supporter, becomes a force of change, a link in a chain of real solutions to the problem in inadequate housing. And whereas, in recognition of World Habitat Day 2009, October 5th, Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanities will address the lack of decent housing around the world, including the need for affordable housing in the Black Hills area. And whereas, focusing on this year's themes, secure tenure and neighborhood revitalization, Black Hills Area Habitat for Humanities will continue to build simple, decent, affordable housing for hardworking families in the Black Hills, including several housing projects here in Rapid City. Now, therefore, let it be Alan Hanks, Mayor of the City of Rapid City, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim October 5th, 2009 as World Habitat Day in Rapid City in recognition of this wonderful organization. We salute the founders and the leaders of this outstanding organization and for their vision and determination to bring citizens together to help eliminate substandard housing in our community. Scott, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Would you like to say a few words?
Just a couple words.
You're welcome.
Well, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I just want to say thank you again for all the support that the City of Rapid City has provided to the Black Hills Area Habitat. And literally from Bangladesh to Botswana to Brazil, all the way to the Black Hills, we've got World Habitat Day being celebrated. And across the world, there's a resounding yes to the need for more simple, decent, affordable housing. And I won't take the time to read the UN Secretary General's letter to you tonight, but suffice to say that the United Nations is very concerned about this matter, and I'm really pleased that our city is also concerned. You also might want to take note that all the way from Belle Fourche, the mayor in Belle Fourche, Spearfish, Custer, Deadwood, and now Rapid City have all proclaimed this is the UN World Habitat Day. So together, I just want to say thank you and a big hurrah for affordable housing. We want to keep doing that work right here in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Now is the time for the general public comment period. This is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on tonight's agenda. Action will not be taken at tonight's meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous votes of the council members present. I do not have any speaker request forms for the general public comment period. Does anyone wish to speak to any item not on the agenda? Very good. We will move on. We're on to the non-public hearing items. This is items 2 through 82. And the chair will look for a motion to open the public comment period for items 2 through 56 inclusive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Chair will look for a motion to close the public comment period. Just so you know, we have no speaker request forms. Let me just ask the obvious question. Is there anyone wishes to speak on any items 2 through 56, 2 through 56 inclusive? I have no speaker request forms. Very good. Chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the consent calendar. Items 2 through 46 inclusive. 2 through 46 inclusive. Does anyone need any of those items pulled? I do have item number 43 we need to pull. Any additional? Please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 12.
Item number 12. Thank you. So far we have 2 and 43. Any additional items? Please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Item 40, please.
Item 40. And 39. 39 and 40. Very good. Any additional items? If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar These are items 2 through 46 inclusive, with the exception of 12, 39, 40, and 43.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent calendar, items 2 through 46 inclusive, with the exception of 12, 39, 40, and 43. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? I'm having a hard time clearing out here. Sam, did you have any? Okay. Roy, can you see if you can clear that out? Not quite working. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to item number 12, and let's see. Alderman Quaker, why don't you, I think Aaron's gone, you're the vice chair, could you please read in item number 12, please?
Item number 12 is to acknowledge the report on the review of the policy of non-responsible bidders. Move to acknowledge the report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just kind of wanted an overview of what this meant. I mean, I wasn't at the Public Works meeting for this
Okay,
particular item.
let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Just to give you some background on this, Alderwoman Martinson and I added this to the Public Works agenda to try to get a feel for what the city's policy is on non-responsible bidders, situations where contractors are not performing up to expectation. The answer is that it's case-by-case situation based on the totality of the circumstances.
Alderman Weifenbach, you still
Thank you,
have the
Mr.
floor,
Quaker.
sir.
I guess I had a question in regards to that. Is there anybody ever been put on this list?
Let's see, Mr. Preston, or let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney. Have we ever declared anybody a non-responsible bidder to this point? Jason?
Yes, I can think of one instance where the council has declared a contractor a non-responsible contractor. There was an extensive process and a hearing in front of the council before that happened.
My other question is what does this also apply to people who don't do bids?
Go to
We-
Jason.
And the reason I ask that is that as I've gone through this process and I've sat here and I've seen plenty of projects that have probably had worst case designs and then have led to not the project actually being built wrong, but designed incorrectly in the very beginning.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A declaration that an individual or a company is a non-responsible bidder only applies to city bid projects. So if someone's out there doing a private project, the only recourse the council would have is if they happen to have a city-issued license, and that really, I think, is probably electrical, plumbing, trenching, and that's about it. The council does not license commercial contractors. You do license residential contractors.
I guess what I meant was people that were, I mean, we don't bid out design jobs for the city, but I've seen plenty of them that have been built incorrectly or, so what covers them? This doesn't cover design jobs for the city. That the job itself was bid, but the design process wasn't bid.
Jason Green, City Attorney.
No, you have a consultant selection process, and if there were problems with a particular design firm and the design on a project that they'd done previously, the consultant selection process would be the first place you would have the opportunity to address that. The second place would be when that contract comes before the council, because since those are not competitively bid, you're not bound to the recommendation. You could decide that you don't want to enter into a contract with a particular designer.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to legal and finance, item number 39. Karen, could you read that in for us, please? Item number 39. Go ahead, please. Oh, you got your mic on.
The approved resolution number 2009-1118, authorizing and directing the issuance and sale of water revenue bonds, Series 2009, to pay the cost of improvements to the municipal water utility, and defining the terms and manner of payment of the bonds and the security therefore. And my motion is for approval.
We have a motion, second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been an important process, and one of the reasons this has been such an important process this year, particularly there's the size of the bonds themselves, but also the city used a much more competitive selection process in the past. And is it correct to state that the firm that will be doing the bonding is a firm that was selected through that process and is not a firm that we've used in the past?
Let's go to Jim Preston, City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. If I understand the question is essentially who's the firm? The underwriter firm is RBC, and they were selected after going through a request for proposal process.
Have we used them? Have we used them in the past? I think that was the second part of the question. I can't think of.
No, I don't believe so. Not that I'm aware. Not since I've been here. We haven't used them.
Okay, Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor.
So our bond counsel will be Dorsey and Whitney, and RBC will be this firm, and First National Bank in Sioux Falls will be the trust carrier.
That's correct. The RBC was the one that was selected through the RFP process.
Okay. I would just like to note that I support selecting this firm. I do, however, wish that the selections for bond counsel and the trust firm would have also been chosen through a competitive process. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 40, please. Karen, if you would, please.
Authorize mayor and finance officer to sign indenture of trust for utility revenue bonds. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that in the future we need to take a closer look at trying to use local banks if we can achieve a comparable deal. Nothing against First National Bank in Sioux Falls, but we have a number of reputable banks in town, and no one has convinced me yet that there aren't any banks in Rapid City that could have handled this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 43. Karen, if you would, please.
Yep. Item number 43. Authorize mayor and finance officer to sign agreement between the city and Rapid City Economic Development Foundation Incorporated. My motion is for approval.
I think we need a recommendation is to continue this for 2 weeks, Jason.
That's all.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to continue for 2 weeks. Discussion on the continuation motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 weeks ago, the council unanimously passed a motion to draft a request, or to give a request to Cabela's that they pay property taxes, going back to the certification of the vote. And if we could just get an update on that in 2 weeks as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to continue this item for 2 weeks. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That does take us to the end of the consent calendar, which was item number 46. We're on to the continued consent items. This is items 47 through 56. Items 47 through 56. Chair would ask if any items 47 through 56 inclusive need to be pulled from the continued consent calendar. If so, please turn on your light. Marcia, you're shaking your head no? How about from the rest of the staff or the council? Seeing none, Chair will look for a motion to approve the continued consent items 4 through 56 inclusive.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the continued consent items. We're on to the non-consent items, items 57 through 82. 57 through 82, the chair would look for a motion to open the public comment period for items 57 through 82 inclusive, please.
So move.
We have a motion and a second to open the public comment period. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. I have one speaker request form on item number 69, Janelle Fink. On, let's see here, item number 69, she represents Fisk Land Surveying. And there again, if you just identify yourself for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Janelle Fink. I'm with Fisk Land Surveying, and I'm here with applicant and landowner Walter Bradsky and his daughter Sandra in the audience here. And I'd like to address you on item number 69, and then later on there's a companion item number 108 on the agenda, and those actually go together. I just wanted to let you know that we're available to answer any questions that you might have or address any comments that you might have. These two items both come to you with a unanimous recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission, and we request your support of that recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. I do not have any additional speaker request forms on any items 57 through 82. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to any items 57 through 82? If not, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We're on to ordinances. Let's see. Karen, if you'd start reading those in. Item number 57, please.
Thank you. Item number 57, second reading ordinance number 5539, an ordinance to provide a dual notice provision for Chapter 8.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to nuisances. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Jason, just a quick question. The some of the revisions, is that just on items 58, 59, 60?
Yes.
Okay, so 57, we're in good shape. Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval as published. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had some discussion with a couple of landlords today, and some of their concerns were the talk about habitual offenders and that type of thing for the ordinances and the code. And my concern is of the same, is that there are several landowners that may own more than one property, and if they have, say, tenants in that property, and the tenants are required to do such things as mowing grass and those types of things, I'm wondering how this is going to be enforced. I guess this question would go to Mr. Tome, and how their enforcement is going to be. Is there a policy written on the enforcement part of this? Because it's been made mention of repeat offenders, and I just want to understand what a repeat offender is.
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney, since he's waving at me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As it's written now, either the landlord or a tenant could be cited for maintaining the nuisance. If the city is forced to abate a nuisance, the only people that can be charged the cost of that are the landlord. They're the record owner of the property, and that's the method that we have. I think you'll find that in the enforcement of this, that code enforcement will be conservative in identifying repeat offenders, and they will use their best efforts to get voluntary compliance. The citation process that's been discussed is really aimed at people that are good at gaming the system.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not into a situation where if a landowner was called several times, but as long as they complied and mowed their weeds or did whatever they needed to be, that they weren't going to be classified as a repeat offender.
Jason Green?
You know, I think if it comes out that every other week code enforcement has to call the landlord, then they probably will be classified as a repeat offender. But if it's just from time to time that they've got the same problem tenant, you know, I think code enforcement is very judicious in their use of prosecution as a remedy, because really the idea is to get the weeds cut.
Right, and that's some of the concerns I had. I had a conversation with my boss at work the other day. He came up to me and said, "Man, you're looking really good. Why are you wearing a suit and tie now?" And I said, "Because it seems like every week we get an email that comes out that says something about the dress code." So I assumed it was me. And the point I'm getting to is the fact that if we have a few people out there that are abusing it, and they're not making they're not making it, making it right by doing the mowing or pulling the weeds or whatever, but say they own a few properties, and they're going through this process, and I can understand being a habitual offender, but I don't want this to grow into some sort of monstrosity that, if you have a tenant in your house, you can't just automatically kick them out because they don't mow the weeds. I mean, you just can't do it. I mean, and so there's got to be some sort of a, discretion that's put into that. Now, my concern is that we make sure that we operate that way and not just all of a sudden start going after these people, and when they're trying to actually get something done. Maybe they have 18 properties and it's the same person, same landlord, or maybe they got 30 properties. The particular landlord that talked to me today had a concern about a car that was parked in front of his house. The car was parked in front of his house and basically abandoned. But he was held responsible for towing away the car that was on a city street. And I see that we're also addressing those in here. And my concerns are is that if someone drops a car off in front of my house, number one, it's a city street. It's not my property, and I want to make sure that they're not getting held responsible for somebody else abandoning a car or whatever the case may be. As long as they're a responsible landlord that says, I'm going to go after my tenant, yeah, and then all of a sudden that tenant moves out and another tenant moves in and that tenant has the same problem, that we're actually working together with the landlord to understand. I think that just because there's a few very, very habitual offenders out there, I don't want everybody going back to my, why I wear the suit scenario, and I don't want everybody in there having to get that same type of treatment because of a few people. And that's my concerns on this and I'm hoping that moving forward we take that into account and just all of a sudden don't start nailing these landlords because, I mean, they have 18 properties and maybe 2 or 3 people are not doing it, but as long as they're getting it done. And the way I read this is it doesn't seem to be that flexible, and that's my concern.
Okay. Let me just chime in just a little bit here, and I think this may alleviate some of Alderman Weifenbach's concerns. The way the ordinance is currently written, we can either ticket either the landlord or the tenant. I will make the assumption that our code enforcement folks, before they go out and actually issue a ticket, actually which has to be done by a police officer, they're going to work and try and figure out whose responsibility to mow the grass. If it's a tenant's responsibility, they would, if indeed they have to ticket someone, it'd be the tenant. If it's the landlord's responsibility, then they would probably ticket the landlord. As I stated earlier, the goal isn't to write tickets. The goal is to get compliance, and that's why we'll have a notification process where we'll actually notice them up front. And we believe we can get to about 90-95% compliance just by putting a door hanger on.
I agree with that, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate that. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. I want to make sure that the people out there knew that it was the council's intention to get some conformity in and not to go out there and beat people up over things. As long as they're willing to work with the city and get those things done, I don't have any problem with it. But I don't want landlords being, marked as habitual offenders because they're trying to work with their tenant. It's not that easy. Some of the properties I've had the doors broken down, and there's nothing that can even be done because the tenant basically runs that property. I mean, they bust into your house, they knock your door down, and you're responsible for it as a landlord. If the tenant decides not to press charges against someone, and I mean, so there's a lot of things that need to be considered, and just making sure that we're aware of that when we deal with these landlords, and not put them all in the same basket and treat them all the same. And I know there's some habitual offenders out there that just don't want to fix things. I understand that, and I just want to make sure we're not putting all those people and they're not all getting the same email. So, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
So regarding the notice provision, it says the notice may be hand-delivered or sent by first-class mail to the owner of record, agent, or occupant. Kevin or Jason, how do we keep track and ensure without certified return receipt, how do you keep track and ensure that they've actually received the notice and they can't claim, well, somebody else, or we never got it?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the case of hand delivery, We would expect the code enforcement officer to come back and make notes in the file that they handed it to the individual personally. If there's ever a question, the code enforcement officer, we could sign an affidavit or testify in court that they, in fact, did deliver it in person.
Okay.
Still the floor.
But how about first class mail?
Jason?
The first-class mail is recognized as an appropriate method for delivering notice to people. So we use return receipt oftentimes because it provides that card, but that's not a legal requirement.
Well, I think that we should use return receipt, because otherwise we run the risk, just what Alderman Weifenbach was talking about a little bit ago. If you have a tenant that doesn't care and the notice is going to the tenant, then the landlord is being set up, or vice versa. I mean, if you have if you do certified mail or return receipt or both, at least you have a record that it was signed for, and you know whose signature is on that line, and it also makes it easier in a legal proceeding as well. So I think that you're going to, within the first year of this ordinance being in effect, we're going to spend a lot of staff time arguing with people over simply the notice provisions. I mean, let's put this to rest now and use return receipt, so that way we can save administratively on these types of arguments.
Did you have a question in there?
Jason.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
We could certainly add that to the ordinance. If you wanted to offer an amendment to insert return receipt in between first class and mail in section 8.16035, I think that would accomplish what you're asking for, and it certainly does make it cleaner.
I would like to offer that amendment.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll say.
Okay, we have a motion and second to amend. We will deal with the amendment only, please. Discussion on the amendment. Alderman LaCroix, did you have a discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, I do. And I think, adding that return signature is going to add even more time to the process. I mean, we're already going out 2 weeks, and that was one of the biggest complaints that we've had at the North Rapids Civic Association, was that, that by the time you send the receipt, you have 14 days, and now you're asking for a signature. And a lot of times what these property owners didn't live in town, so that's why they weren't getting them. Down at the county courthouse, they send it to the property owner, not to the actual property. So if if you have a mailing address at the county, it should be going to that address, wherever it may be. If you have some company in town handling multiple rentals, then it would go there, and it's their responsibility to contact the homeowner or the landowner. So I'm not going to be in support of the amendment on it, because I think it's going to drag it out even longer. I do have more comments, but I'll wait till we get back to the original motion.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on the amendment only, please. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson on the amendment only, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement with Lloyd, because I do realize, particularly the issue of tall grass or weeds growing. 2 weeks makes a significant difference in terms of weeds growing, and people can't understand, who maybe have called code enforcement, don't see any action taken, and that's pretty dismaying to someone who's living next door to someone who has 3-foot high kochia growing in their front yard. So I'm in agreement with Lloyd. I think the solution that's being offered is sufficient. And I also want to make it clear in my own mind that the occupant of the premises could be a renter, and that's how I'm interpreting that. I guess I'm asking legal counsel to make sure I'm interpreting that correctly.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Those
Okay.
are my only comments.
Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock on the amendment only, please.
I'm the same way with Karen and Lloyd. I think these are for repeat offenders. I think as a landlord, as a tenant, if you have issues with code enforcement. This is why we came up with these new ordinances, is to save time in one sense, and also get the job done for repeat offenders. This is not for your simple person that didn't mow their grass that time, or didn't do their or didn't cut their weeds down, didn't do their ice shoveling and stuff. This is for repeat offenders. So your landlords usually know if they're repeat offenders. Your tenants know if they're repeat offenders. All you're doing here is adding one more step for somebody. It sounds nice, but bottom line is these are the people that keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and they do keep track of these as code enforcement, and that's why these rules come up. It's not to be a Gestapo to anybody. This is actually to maintain the beautification of Rapid City, and people comply. I don't think it's that hard, and after being a landlord on some of this stuff, you know who's going to have the problems and you know who doesn't have the problems. And if they're repeat offenders, there's something else you have to do as a landlord in order to control that problem. That becomes your problem and shouldn't be the city's. So I don't believe you need to send them another notice after the notices. We can try this, and if it comes back that it becomes a problem, we can try something else. But I believe that what we have on the books right now would work sufficient, and it would work in a timely manner, which would work for repeat offenders, which is usually the problem.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker on the motion to amend, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's a great deal of confusion regarding the purpose of my amendment. There is no time whatsoever added to the process by doing a return receipt, because a return receipt is going out with the first-class mailing. So all we're doing is adding that to the mailing itself. There is no additional mailing at all. And I don't want this characterized as being an additional step. This is to help protect staff, to protect the city, and to protect the landowner and tenant. All we're doing is adding a little green card to the first-class mailing, so that way we have something to put in the file that shows that the letter went out. There is no additional time delay whatsoever. And I would ask Alderman LaCroix and Olson and Hadcock to consider that strongly and to support this amendment, because this doesn't add anything. This helps the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question for our city attorney.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Jason, on the return receipt, that's what we do today. What happens if they don't sign receipt of receiving the letter?
Practically, it adds a lot of time because we always have to get actual notice to the property owner before we go do the abatement. There's good case law on that. The other thing that we see is that someone will wait till the 10th day to go sign and come in and complain that they only have 3 days or 4 days to get into compliance. So even though that on its face it doesn't increase the time limit at all, practically it does create additional issues. And Mr. Tome has reminded me that the cost for doing the return receipt is more. If they've got to do 30, 40 mailings on a snow event, for example, that starts to add up to real dollars.
Thank you. Alderman Kroger, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I know that's been a problem in the past, is this return receipt and people not signing for them and dragging the process on just as they normally do. And so I'm not going to be supporting the motion. I think if our city attorney tells us that just a regular first-class mailing is suffice, then that's the way I'm going to vote, and so I will not be supporting the amendment on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a lot of confusion here, and I didn't try to muddy the waters. I'm for all this, but I could see, number one, we're talking about repeat offenders. I don't know where that came from. I don't see anywhere in here where it talks about, in this code, talks about repeat offenders. If there's a list of those people, I'd like to see it. I'd like to ask Mr. Tome if there's a list of those people.
Well, just for a point of clarification, the staff never brought up repeat offenders. I think that actually came from the dais.
Well, we're muddying the waters here, and the point of the matter is if you send someone a first-class mailing, the only proof that you have is what? None. If you send somebody a return receipt, even if they don't sign it, you can at least have an indication that you sent it. And it may or may not increase the cost if they have to abate the property or whatever. Maybe we can add it to the ordinance if they pay for the return receipt. I'm just looking for an opportunity to make sure that we have some level of assurance that these people are getting notified, because that's the key that's going to happen. Any of the abatements or whatever that we've seen come forward where people have argued it, that's the first case thing they'll say is, I didn't get a copy of the letter or whatever the case may be. And the second thing is, where are you sending the letter to? I don't think that's part of this policy. I'm for this. I understand it. I'm an advocate for tightening the codes. That's not the problem. I just think that when we throw everybody into the same basket and we treat everybody the same, that's not fair. I mean, there's people out there that are to that level where they need to get the fees, or they have the police department come and hand them a citation. And I think at that level, you should have put the time in to make sure that you're covered, so when they come back to us, that we could say, yep, this letter went out on this date, here's a copy of the letter. Any kind of service like that is just good business practice. Just to send out a letter, I don't even know where the letter's gonna go. Does anybody, I mean, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask.
It's actually right in the ordinance. It says the notice may be hand-delivered or sent by first-class mail addressed to the owner of record, agent, or occupant at his or her last known address. So it's actually right in the ordinance.
Okay, so it's gonna go to the owner of record at their address, okay. And to the repeat offenders or whatever, I'm fine with it if we don't pass it. I just think we're gonna open up a can of worms if we start labeling people that repeat offenders and those types of things over. I hope that we just approach this with some caution and make sure that we're open to a little bit of scrutiny on it, so, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just a couple of things. I was on this committee, and it was for people that were basically the same nuisance. Call it what you want. I don't think it's a problem. I think if it's a problem, and we were doing things right the first time, we wouldn't have had so many people coming up with code enforcement complaints. So we changed this in a way so hopefully we would hit the people that were having the most issues. Call it whatever you want. The other thing is have we had problems in the past, Jason or Kevin? Because when we were going through this, I didn't see any problem with the way we were doing the mailings. It was just how we were doing business and how people wouldn't comply because of what the ordinance was saying at this time. And so we had to make a little bit stricter rules for the people that weren't complying the most. So have we had problems with the way we've done the mailings and notifying people and making sure they got the notice properly of whoever was supposed to get the notice?
Mr. Tome. Yeah, go ahead. What's the matter? The IT stuff isn't working?
Imagine that.
Who's responsible?
If I may, historically we haven't had problems as far as the way we've been doing it, and I do feel like adding the certified return receipt would add an additional cost and burden, and frankly defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do. So,
I guess that's my point. If there was a problem, and I appreciate Mr. Quaker and Mr. Weifenbach of how we did those mailings, I didn't, when I was in this committee, find that it was the mailings problem and people getting notified. It's once they got notified that they wouldn't comply and play the system. So that's why we didn't do the extra step that you guys were thinking of. Not that that wasn't a bad idea, but again, with the process and the procedure working as it is, I didn't think we needed to change it. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
To clarify, my understanding of return receipt means the person who receives the letter has to sign at the receipt of the letter. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
And that's really the essence of this. It means someone has to sign, or the person to which the item is addressed needs to sign for it. And in my experience, the very things that Mr. Kroger's talked about happen. People don't sign it, and then they wait. And so it doesn't, so then the kochia grows 1 foot longer. And so I think that I don't think this is necessary. I think the first class meeting will take care of it. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? The motion on the floor is the motion to amend. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
No.
I believe we had motion fails with one aye. Okay, we're back to the original motion. Original motion is for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I think these are some good changes, and I just want to say thank you to Code Enforcement Kevin Tome and Aaron and Deb for working on this and getting this forward. At the North Rapids Civic Association meeting, they praised the changes that were made, and I foresee these changes as being you know, we talk a lot about rentals, and North Rapid has a lot of rentals, and that's why they had such concerns. And we talked about sending out notices to owners who weren't in town, and they weren't getting noticed, just as we talked about. But they think it's a good idea that the ticketing process gets to the person who's occupying the house. I mean, if you've made the attempt to contact both sides and it gets to that point, and the reason why I say that is, you know, before I got married, we rented out my house now, and I'd gotten a call from the utility company saying, well, so-and-so's behind, do you want to shut it off? I said, go ahead and shut it off. He needs to learn a lesson. And that goes the same way as I think with code enforcement. I think you guys are going to contact both, try and do both. You're going to do the occupant and the landlord, and there's going to come a point where I think you guys might have to work together. But I think it's a good positive step. The North Rapid Civic Association approves it, and they actually said, why did it take so long? It was their comment. So.
Okay. Further discussion. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Karen, could you read an item number 58, please?
Item number 58, second reading ordinance number 5540, an ordinance amending Chapter 8.28 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to grass and weeds as amended. Move for approval.
We have a motion and second for approval of second reading of ordinance 5540. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney, who's going to tell us to look in the binders for revised language.
Actually, they're linked on this one.
Oh, they're linked?
Yeah, for 58, 59, and 60, there is the version of the ordinance as approved on first reading, and it's listed as amended. It's really as recommended to the committee, or to the council from the Legal and Finance Committee. So I would just request that the motion maker clarify that the motion is to approve the amended version as recommended by Legal and Finance.
That would be my motion.
Thank you.
And that is all right with the seconder? Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval of the amended version as recommended by Legal and Finance. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 59, please.
Item number 59, second reading ordinance number 5541, an ordinance to revise the method of removal of the junk motor vehicles from private property by amending Chapter 10.56 of the Rapid City Municipal Code as amended. And my motion would be for approval.
Okay, we have a
Of
motion
the version
of the amended ordinance as recommended by
as
Legal and
recommended.
Finance.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be my motion.
And we had the second, correct? We have the second, Amber? Okay, very good. We have a motion and a second for approval of the amended version as per recommended by Legal and Finance. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this goes back to the conversation I had with a couple of landlords that were, they were abated or charged for abandoned vehicles that were taken from the front of their house that were on the city street. Is there any case where the city would think that that could happen, Mr. Mayor?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anything that's on the public right-of-way can be towed without notice to the landlord after 24 hours as per existing ordinance. I don't believe that they should have been charged for anything in the public right-of-way. If it's on their property in any way, though, then absolutely they can be charged.
I understand the difference between on somebody's property, but on somebody's street, someone has no control. I can't control anybody who parks in front of my house. The only thing I can do is call code enforcement or the police department, but if it sits there and I don't own the car, is there any case that this car could be towed away and charged to me?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The only person who should be responsible for that is the owner of the vehicle.
All right, I'll have a case I want to bring forward to you at a later date, so thank you.
Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval of the amended ordinance per the recommendation of Legal and Finance. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 60, please.
Second reading ordinance number 5542, an ordinance to provide a penalty for failure to remove snow and ice from sidewalks by amending section 12.20.070 of the Rapid City Municipal Code as recommended by Legal and Finance. My motion is for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of second reading of ordinance 5542, which is the amended ordinance as recommended by Legal and Finance. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Could we have a brief review of what kind of resources are available for elderly people or people with disabilities who do not have the means or the ability to comply with this ordinance?
Let's do this very quickly. It's not quite on point, but let's go ahead and do that. Kevin, you want to talk about United Way and very briefly, please.
Again, I'm not aware of all the programs. There's a Scoop It program, a couple other entities that code enforcement does work with. There's somebody that is elderly or disabled or whatever, and they can't get out and clean their sidewalks, so they do try and work with them.
Okay, very good. Alderman Quaker. Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Tom.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Tom, my question is in regarding to this. Like I say, I support these, but there's no policy attached to these things, and this is the part that scares me, is I understand that people need to clear their sidewalks, but I guarantee as sure as I'm sitting here, I'm not always going to get to that sidewalk right away. What is the policy for code enforcement on sidewalks?
Kevin.
Well, the analogy I'll use is a police department. The police department doesn't have a policy on which speeders you'll write and which speeders you will not write. The officer uses their discretion. Same with all these ordinances. You know, the goal is to use common sense and go out and get compliance at the curbside, is what I call it, working with the tenant, working with the owner of the property. I know the level of awareness was raised by the Journal article on Sunday. Doesn't mean we're going to go out and be heavy-handed and go out and start stormtrooping the neighborhoods looking for high vegetation, et cetera. So I hope that concern can be alleviated. We'll still use the same common sense practices we've been using, but this will help streamline the processes in the most chronic cases where we have trouble getting compliance.
Right. I guess I probably would have drawn that conclusion myself, but I wanted to make sure we go on a public record because I've had several people ask me about those types of things in reference to, you know, especially elderly people or people in the community who may need help. And I didn't think that we would do that, but I just want to make sure we're on the record of stating that and understanding that it is people's responsibility to get their sidewalks clean. And I remember last year, twice I had to get my snow blower out there, and I have a large snow blower that could barely make it through. So I would like to see a little bit more concrete of a policy, but I guess that'll have to work. So thanks.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval of second reading of ordinance 5542 as amended and recommended by Legal and Finance Committee. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 61, please.
Item number 61, first reading ordinance number 5544, an ordinance to update alcoholic beverage licensing requirements to reflect changes in state law by amending sections 5.12.030 and 5.12.060 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and a second. First reading of ordinance 5544. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm on a roll here, so I guess everybody's wondering why I'm talking on every item, but a question arose on our liquor licenses that were the difference between a license that is on the market already, that already is on the street, and a liquor license that you purchase from the city. And one of the differences, which I found would be a big difference, is ours are non-transferable, but yet the ones on the street are transferable from one location to another location. I just wanted to maybe get some clarity on that issue from Mr. Green.
Yeah, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you're referring to the restaurant license that was recently authorized by the state legislature, and they are different than the general on-sale liquor license. The only reason for the difference that I can give you is it was one of the requirements that the legislature imposed when they authorized these additional licenses. The reason that was legislation was necessary is that Rapid City actually has more on-sale liquor licenses than we're technically allowed because we've annexed them in over time. So in order to get new ones issued, the Municipal League worked with the state legislature to get this restaurant license approved for particularly, food serving establishments. So there were some restrictions that were added to that one that do not apply to the general license.
So it doesn't apply to what we're talking about right now? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval of first reading ordinance 5544. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 62, please.
First reading ordinance number 5545, and an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Peter Newman for Mills Drug Incorporated for rezoning from medium density residential district to general commercial district on lots generally described as being located at 730 St. Cloud. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion second for approval of first reading of ordinance number 5545, rezoning from medium density residential to general commercial located at 730 St. Cloud. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. So approval of first reading then means, Marcia, that this goes to the Planning Commission for a full hearing. And are you recommending that if this comes forward for approval, that it include a plan development designation?
Marcia?
There is a related comprehensive plan amendment that will also be considered by the Planning Commission on Thursday. The Future Land Use Committee has supported that amendment to the comprehensive plan. They did not recommend that there be a plan development because of the zoning adjacent to it. But those issues will come forward to you after the Planning Commission acts on it and prior to second reading of the rezoning.
So the plan is for a parking lot, tear down an old house and put a parking lot?
Marcia?
That is correct.
So we're starting to see a lot of this happen along Mount Rushmore Road, and by a lot of this, I mean, I've seen several of these proposals come forward in the last year and a half. On Fifth Street, we did a planned development overlay. We do not have that for A Street or for Mount Rushmore Road. Is that correct?
Marcia?
That is correct.
And that is something that the council would have and the Planning Commission would have the authority to do if we so chose to use that sort of a mechanism.
Certainly.
And in your opinion, is that something worth considering?
May I answer the question?
Marcia?
I think there needs to be further discussion before we went down that road, and certainly something that we could start a discussion at the City Council. There's also the Mount Rushmore road study that we're waiting on the consultant to finish, and that will be coming forward. It's probably an appropriate venue for that discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor is for first reading of ordinance 5545. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 63, please.
First reading ordinance number 5546, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Ferber Engineering Company Incorporated for South Dakota Game Fish and Parks for a rezoning from general commercial district to public district on property located south and west of the intersection of Dean Lane and Sturgis Road. My motion is for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval of first reading of ordinance 5546, which is rezoning from general commercial to public district on Sturgis Road. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is in my view, a very positive change for this particular piece of property. It is going to be a wonderfully designed public educational program for adults and children in our community and those who visit our community. It has a very complete plan, so this is going to develop in a very orderly fashion. It's intended to be an outdoor campus, encouraging adults and children to interact in the activities, all types of outdoor activities, and it's a very good change, and in my view, a very positive change. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion is for approval. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 64, please.
First reading ordinance number 55. Okay. First reading ordinance number 5547, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Ferber Engineering Company Incorporated for South Dakota Game Fish and Parks for a rezoning from low-density residential district to public district on property located located at the northeastern terminus of North 40th Street. My motion is for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of first reading of ordinance 5547, rezoning from low-density residential to public, located at the northeast terminus of North 40th Street. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 65, please.
First reading ordinance number 5548, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Ferber Engineering Company Incorporated for South Dakota Game Fish and Parks for a rezoning from Mining and Earth Resources Extraction District to Public District on property located southwest of the intersection of Knutson Lane and Sturgis Road. My motion is for approval.
We have a motion and second for approval of first reading of ordinance 5548, rezoning from mining and earth resource excavation to district to a public district located on Sturgis Road and Knutson Lane. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 66, please.
First reading ordinance number 5549, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Ferber Engineering Company Incorporated for South Dakota Game Fish and Parks for a rezoning from low-density residential to public district on a parcel of land located at 603 and 620 North 44th Street. My motion is for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval of first reading of ordinance 5549, which is rezoning from low-density residential to public district located at 603 and 620 North 40th Street. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 67, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for the installation of sidewalks along Monta Vista Drive as they abut lots 9 and 10 and located at 2019 and 2021 Monta Vista Drive. My motion is for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 68, please.
An exception request to waive the requirement to install sidewalk per city ordinance 12.16.080 on property located at 2021 Monta Vista Drive. Let's see, what's the remainder of this? My motion is for approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. 69, please.
A request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Walter J. Bradsky for a layout plat on lots 5A and 5B of Aspen Estates subdivision located at 7800 Elkhart Road. My motion is for approval with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Item number 70, a request by Renner and Associates for Greg Lester for a layout plat on lots 1 through 3 of Block 1 Lester subdivision, which is located at 1714 Creek Drive. My motion is for approval with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 71, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign tax increment district financing developers agreement with Cabela's.
Motion
Is the motion to move this?
continue, just like the other one.
To
2 weeks.
continue this? And what is the date? For 2 weeks?
19th, October 19th.
To continue this to October 19th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue item number 71 to the October 19th City Council meeting. Discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to the Public Works Committee items. Item number 72, and Alderman Sam Quaker, if you would, please.
Item 72 is to approve with stipulations a request by C-Tech Engineering for Upper Crust Landscape Company for a vacation of a portion of a minor drainage and utility easement located at 1825 Haynes Avenue. Move to approve with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Marcia? you want to give your disclaimer?
Thank you. They
Okay.
did not meet the 4 PM Wednesday deadline, however, you can approve it if you so wish.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion on that motion? And that is for approval with stipulations. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item number 73, please.
Item 73 is to approve with stipulations a request by Centerline for Olson Development Company to consider an application for a vacation of a major drainage easement, more generally described as being located in the west side of Meadow Lane, south of Twilight, and north of Weather Vane Lane. Move approval with stipulations.
I have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 74, please.
Item 74 is to approve with stipulations a request by FMG Inc. for Steve Kalkman to consider an application for a vacation of a portion of a drainage easement located at 2926 Stockade Drive. Move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Motion is for approval with stipulations. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 75, please.
Item 75 is main fire station water line reconstruction project. Move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Jim Preston, City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. I would request that the motion would be award the bid for the main fire station water line reconstruction project to Hills Material Company in the amount of $82,874.50.
Second.
Okay, we have a substitute motion and a second to award the bid to Hills Material for $82,874.50. Is that correct, Mr. Preston? Okay, and we have a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 76, please.
Item 76 is a request for authorization to seek proposals for engineering services for St. Patrick Street Siphon Odor Control Facility. Estimated design and construction costs, I believe it was $300,000.
That's true.
Is what came out of the meeting the other day, and that is my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to, approve the authorization to seek proposals for engineering services on St. Pat for the siphon odor control for an estimated design and construction cost of $300,000. That is correct, Mr. Preston.
Yeah,
Okay, very good.
$300,000 is what was said to say.
Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Preston, the bids.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. We do have 4 bid items this evening. The first item is the City of Rapid City, referred to as PET building, but it's police, transportation,
Evidence, transportation.
evidence building. Phase 3, we received 4 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Heavy Constructors Incorporated, doing business with Gusterson Builders, to include the base bid, the alternate number 1, and then the unit price for aluminum operable awning windows, $940 a piece, and we're requesting 8 of those for a total for the whole bid of $114,470.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have motion and a second to accept or to award the bid to Heavy Contractors, Inc., DBA Gustafson Builders, for a total dollar amount of $114,740, which is the base bid, plus alternate 1, plus 8 of the units at $940. Correct, Mr. Preston?
Yes, sir.
Okay, in discussion on that motion, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Since this bid came up higher than what we had in there, where is the money coming or the funding coming from for the extra costs?
Mr. Preston, or let's go to Dale Tech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the CIP government buildings, there, I believe, was $150,000 for this project that was identified for funding. The advertising authority was only $90,000, so there is a budgeted amount of $150,000 for this project.
Thank you. And so what do they do with the extra funding source if we have $30,000 or $40,000 left, they just put it back in CIP?
I can answer, that's correct.
Where do you put it, Jim?
It just remains in the CIP balance.
Just want to check.
Do we expect any change orders on this project based on what the specifications were?
Mr. Tech?
Don't anticipate any at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, further discussion. Mr. Tech, did you have anything else to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Motion on the floor is to award the bid to Heavy Contractors for a grand total of $114,470. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
Item number 78 is the downtown alley reconstruction project. We received 3 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from J&J Asphalt Company, an amount of $57,615.75.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid to J&J Asphalt Company for a total bid amount of $57,615.75. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
Item number 79 is the 5th Street pedestrian crossing at Rapid City Regional Hospital. We received 5 bids as listed. Staff is recommending accepting the bid from Simon Contractors of South Dakota Incorporated in the amount of $144,944.92.
Do we have a motion, please? We have a motion and a second to award the contract to Simon Contractors of South Dakota, Inc. for a grand total of $144,944.92. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'd just like to congratulate the engineer's estimate there. The last 2 bids have been pretty darn close, so we're not always perfect, but they've been doing a good job at those engineers' estimates lately and getting things down a little bit closer, so we appreciate that. Thank you, Robert and Dale, for your help on that.
Okay. Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Item number 80 is the Rapid River Subdivision Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. We received 7 bids as listed. Staff is recommending that we refer this item to Public Works for recommendation.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and second to refer item number 80 to Public Works, which is going to be on the 13th, so it would be October 13th, Public Works meeting. Any discussion on that continuation motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Is there any additional information, Jim, that needs to be gathered prior to Public Works? Or can we make a decision on this tonight?
I'm going to
Mr.
refer
Tech.
that to Mr. Tech if I could.
Mr. Tech, the reason for the request to refer this back?
As I understand, this is an assessed project, and the landowner is participating in this project upfront cost. He has not dedicated his money or got his cash to the city, so therefore we can't recommend award of this bid until we have cash in hand.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Motion on the floor is to refer item number 80 back to the Public Works Committee on the October 13th meeting. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It takes us to mayor's items. I have nothing. Council items and liaison reports. Number 81, status of publishing and distribution of the adopted anti-retaliation policy. Alderman Quaker and Weifenbach. Alderman Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. On February 17, the council unanimously adopted a policy on ensuring that city employees were allowed to talk to their elected officials for essentially any reason or no reason. It also encourages employees to follow the established grievance process, but it also helps them recognize that direct communication with the mayor and council members is encouraged. This is a departure from past practice, and it is an important change in the culture and dynamic of how City Hall operates. And although the policy was adopted unanimously. The actual memo is not published anywhere to speak of. It was emailed to all the city employees, but my understanding is that it would be posted on the intranet for city employees, put on in the new hire checklist, put in the new employee handbook, and that the policy would be published. And it makes sense to publish resolutions, which is something that we have always done. So my question is what is the time frame for doing that, and is there any particular reason why it hasn't been done already?
Okay. Let me clarify one thing. The resolution that I brought forward, Alderman Quaker, you made the statement that employees were encouraged to talk to city council people. That was not part of my resolution. I don't think that was ever part of the discussion. What it basically stated was the fact that if they felt uncomfortable, and I'm going to read this verbatim, in the event that an employee does not feel comfortable discussing employment-related issue with the supervisor within the usual chain of command, the employee may discuss the issue directly with the mayor or the human resource director, the city attorney, or a member of the city council who will assist the employee in bringing the issue to the mayor. I just want to make sure that clarification, because there again, we have one grievance process under state statute. And although we encourage employees to talk with folks that they feel comfortable with, I don't think the council ever made the statement they were encouraging city employees to directly contact council members about employee-related issues. With that, Jason, did you have a comment? And then, let's see, Sam, I'll come back to you as soon as we go to Jason.
The only comment I would add was that the council's action on February 17 is a resolution in and of itself. It's not a formal resolution as you see sometimes drafted, but any action the council takes that's not an ordinance is a resolution. So there is a resolution in place. It was published as a part of the minutes. It did not include the memo, as Alderman Quaker indicated, but that is what the city policy is today. If the council wants a formal resolution, there should be a motion to direct the preparation of such.
Yep, we'll go back. Alderman Quaker, let's go back to you. I'll give you the floor back.
Thank you, Mayor. The last sentence of the memo says, the city will not retaliate against an employee for discussing employment-related issues directly with the mayor or with the human resources director, the city attorney, or a member of the city council. So if an employee talks to one of us and then is later discouraged or rebuked or whatever it is for having talked to one of us, that's retaliation, and that's directly against the policy. So I think the policy is very easily interpreted as an encouragement of city employees to talk to council members at any time. And I would encourage city employees to talk to me anytime that they want to, and they already do. And there have been a number of good decisions that the council has made that have been the direct result of city employees providing information to city council members. Again, when we pass resolutions, they are published. This is not published. The sentence of the city will not retaliate against an employee for discussing employment-related issues directly with the mayor, human resources director, city attorney, or member of the city council is not directly published in the minutes, although the reference to it is. I'm disappointed that it hasn't been published in the minutes, because it should be. And in my years on the council, every resolution that we've ever passed has been published in the minutes. And for this not to be published in the minutes and to not be on the intranet for city employees and not in the new hire checklist and not in the employee handbook is a concern. And I don't think that another motion by the council is necessary. The council already has unanimously spoken that this is now official policy and should be published as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my concerns is not directly involved with employment-related issues, and as we are clarifying your memo here, we're talking about issues of general public concern. Any city employee may speak with the mayor and alderman about issues of general public concern without restriction. Matters of general public concern include things like proposed ordinances or citywide policies, and so on. the thing, the council passed this resolution just enforcing what was passed in 2002. I think it would be appropriate for the employees to know that they have this option. I thought that when we talked about this and originally passed it, I think we did vote and decided not to put it in specifically in the handbook, but I think at some point it should be made available to people to see it. I mean, why waste the time passing a resolution if nobody even knows it exists? We have new employees. Our turnover rate is, I don't know what it is, but it's even if it's 5 or 10%, there's 5 or 10% of the people that, unless they read the state codified laws or whatever, won't understand. And I have a direct concern in relationship to an incident that just happened that I was involved in, that the people were very afraid to come forward because they have gone forward to their supervisors and their direct supervisors and felt that by coming to me, they were in fear of their employment. And that's what made me raise this question again. I don't see any issue with publishing this somewhere as we discussed, or put it in the minutes, or put it in a new employee handout that they have, so they know that they can talk to their city council people and not feel that their boss is being intimidated or the chain of commands being broken or whatever. I'm a citizen just like everybody else out here, and a lot of the information I get is from my constituents and from the citizens, and a lot of the information I get on a daily basis is from the employees, whether it's gathering information or them giving me information. I don't want them to feel that they're in threat of losing their job or maybe retaliated against, and understand that we're backing them up on a day-to-day basis. Not necessarily am I concerned about grievances. I understand there's a process in place for that. But my concern is other issues, my gathering of information, or if they have concerns that they need to talk about that they feel that they can't go to their direct supervisors for. And I think that everyone here is clear on the incidences that I'm referencing. So just to allow this to be put somewhere on the internet or handed out to new employees, or maybe on a yearly basis sent to the employees of the council, I think they should be encouraged to talk to their councilman just like any constituent would be. So when we talk about not encouraging them, I think that is a little bit of a downplay, and I think that's part of the fear factor. So encouraging them to discuss, obviously I believe most council people would encourage them that there's a process in place, and if they've gone to that process and they feel that there may be some threat of retaliation in their job, they need to have that option to be able to visit with the mayor or a council person or any elected official in that matter. So that was my concern, and nothing to really do with grievances, just policies and procedures on a daily basis. I believe that most council people interact with a lot of the staff here. So that's my concern, is that if we spent the time to put this together, the council decided it was a good idea, but we put it in the closet and hid it. I want to bring it back out of the closet, post it somewhere. I don't want to rehash whether it should go in a handbook or not. I think we decided it shouldn't, but it should be available to the people that work for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. This can get pretty complicated by going a lot of different directions, but, fine example, as Mr. Weifenbach had talked about, is he had a concern, and he did follow the proper procedure. He brought it to the mayor. I mean, that's how it gets done. I guess my concern is, and that was the prime, book example of how it should work, and they did a good job at that. The concerns I get is if there is an actual grievance process, it should follow that procedure. There is different cases in the workplace that they need to follow the steps, but as there's exceptions to every rule, and Mr. Weifenbach just mentioned it, and he followed that perfectly. So my caution is that, instead of following the grievance process, and depending on what the situation is, and investigations need to be done, my concern is if something comes forward on the dais without the proper investigation. And that's where my big concern is I hate to have something thrown out at a legal and finance or a city council meeting without the proper investigation on both sides. We need to hear both sides. But I guess I yield to the floor.
Okay. Further discussion? Further discussion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you. I'll just reiterate my position, and that is that the council had unanimously adopted this policy, and as with all other resolutions that are published, this one should be as well. And we will continue to have further discussion on this until the right thing is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I guess my point, and I did look it up, what we're doing in this resolution is a feel-good to say that we care as a council. That's what I feel this is doing, because it already says it in state and federal law. We're just making a resolution that says that we feel the same way as a city when we already have it in state and federal law. It says right at the top, a resolution affirming the City of Rapid City's intent to follow the state and federal laws prohibiting retaliation against city employees under certain circumstances. So what we did is the same thing. We're showing people, and I'll say it again, the employees of Rapid City that we care, and we're following the same rules, and if they read those rules, they pretty much got it down already. And I know that from having a business and listening to employees on certain issues. It's a feel-good resolution, and most of the time when we do resolutions that aren't ordinances, they're feel-good. And if that's what it takes for the employees of Rapid City to feel that we are going to take care of them as a council, as a mayor, or as heads of their departments, I'm okay with this. But I don't think it needs to be published. I think they have an understanding. If they have an understanding of rules, it's pretty much published. You can also look it up online on, I forgot what they were calling it, but I was looking at all kinds of stuff on it, and basically it just says the same thing. Again, I appreciate, again, the two councilmen bringing this up. I think most of it's common sense, and some of it we just, people need to know just by word of mouth a lot of times that we do care, and we do as council members, and I think we take care of them well. And we try to follow this process, going through mayor, going through Jason, asking the questions we need to ask to make sure people aren't getting retaliated against. And I think in the past, since I've been here, a lot of council members have brought things to the mayor and to the department heads, and they've gotten taken care of. Have we probably got everything? Maybe not. But again, I think the process works as it is. Before I thought we could do better, but I think doing better is just getting the word out and making sure we care about the employees and the citizens of Rapid City of what they're saying, and I think this council has done a good job of that.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
I thought it was important for employees to understand that they can come and talk to their city council member, and I said so as recorded in the minutes. My question really is the state and federal law in any way a part of a handout that goes to employees as a part of the booklet that, or whatever information you give to employees so they understand both the state law and the federal law concerning this particular item?
Jason Green, City Attorney.
I believe there are copies of the harassment policies, codes of conduct in that, but I would defer to Mr. Tome to confirm that. I think that it does go to
Kevin, is that a yes? You're nodding yes?
Thank you. So then that piece of information would be available to employees, and as we talk about it, that retaliation kind of issues would be a part of what is already given to employees. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? I have no additional lights. I guess we'll look for motion to acknowledge.
Second.
We have a motion second to acknowledge. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item number 81A, this is Alderman Lloyd LaCroix with a report on strengthening families.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to give a few reports on the Mayor's Task Force for Strengthening Families. First, I'd like to take a moment of privilege and say that Mr. Vice President Malcolm Chapman's at home with a sick kid, and as they say with strengthening families, 90% of being a dad is being there, so he needed to be there, and we wish him well, and our thoughts are with him. And also we have Mr. Costello, who is with his wife on a long vacation and strengthening his family. So I just wanted to throw those out to say that the council supports their council members when they need to be gone, and I'm happy to announce that. First, the first thing I'd like to bring up is this is a step up for Kids Week. This is October 5th through 9th. October 9th, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. at the Doll Fine Arts. The Voices for Children and the Mayor's Strengthening Families Youth Committee. We invite everybody to come on down. What we're going to do is we're going to award a winner for the read the essay during the winner will read their essay during the youth mapping event at October 9th, 2009, and will receive a $100 savings bond. The essay will be shared with the governor and the members of the South Dakota legislators. What that was is the fifth graders, fourth and fifth graders, students within a 50-mile radius of Rapid City were asked to write a 500-word essay or less and submit it neatly written, the entire. And this was to see what, give a description on what homelessness meant to them. And so we were rewarding a $100 gift certificate bond on that. And they also be writing a letter to the governor. And the question that was asked is if you had a chance to sit down with the South Dakota Governor Rounds and tell him what would help your family, kids in your neighborhood, and kids across South Dakota, what would you say? And so we'll be rewarding that at that time, and we'll also be giving out, we did a study of the schools, a survey, and we'll have the results. John Jucero will be bringing that back that's from the Youth Engagement Committee. So we'd welcome everybody to come down between 9 and 10 for that. We also have Wednesday the 7th, there's going to be, let me find my paper now. There's a spin-off from the Strengthening Families Task Force. Deb Hadcock at the last meeting in Washington with Barb Garcia, they stepped up and the mayor also with the Bank on Rapid City. They're going to be having a meeting at the Journey Museum October 7th between 9 and 11. And this is, I'll read what the goals of Bank on Rapid City is. Bank on Rapid City is a community-wide effort that will make mainstream banking and lending available to everyone wishing to use it and to provide residents with the tools they need to achieve the financial sufficiency. The goals of Bank on Rapid City are to facilitate and encourage partnerships with the community that will make mainstream banking and lending available to everyone wishing to use it, and to provide the tools that will help residents make better financial decisions, utilize credit responsibly, and maximize their financial security through the increased earnings and savings and investments. The Bank on Rapid City is part of the city's existing effort to promote family financial stability. The City of Rapid City, nonprofit organizations, and lending institutions have been working together on financial empowerment projects for the community since 1994, when the first home buyers education course was created and provided to the community. The city has adopted the Strengthening Families for Better Outcomes for Youth and Children platform. The mayor appointed and leads the task force to identify the top priority needs and gaps in services to develop plans to address these issues, set goals, and track accomplishments. The task force identified 15 issues and prioritized them for action. 6 priorities were chosen to address in the first year of action. Committees were formed. The committees are tasked with picking 1 to 2 activities to implement towards addressing the issues, with goals of accomplishing activities within 1 year. Each year, the priority list will be reassessed for new activities and goals will be added. This year, we are adding the financial stability empowerment. And we also received a working grant with that from the National League of Cities, and that's what part of what's coming up on Wednesday night. And this is all come through the National League of Cities Youth Education Institute, and then next week I'll be going to a summit in Boston for the same thing. And if you guys remember, this is an every other year conference. And 2 years ago, we brought back the poverty simulation workshop to Rapid City from this summit. And to date, I believe we've had 800 people go through that simulator. So, and this, we also, the Bank on Rapid City was something that was in San Antonio 2 years ago, and it finally moved up and moved forward, and with Barb Garcia and Ms. Hadcock, and bringing it back from Washington in January, that's really moving forward too. But there's several other things the Strengthening Families is working on. I'll bring that up in a later date, but we've got about 4 or 5 other things underneath our umbrella that are moving forward, so we'll be talking about them later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
On the bank on systems, basically, it's an education for the community on our banking systems, and that's not just for poor people, that's for many levels of people in our community that just don't know how to do, or even business people that don't know how to use the system for doing their banking. And you'd be surprised how many people in our community, even business people, that do not know how to use the banking system. So this is something that is not for any level, certain level of people in Rapid City. This is for many. We are doing questionnaires throughout the city with the employees of the city, Pennington County, and then just different nonprofits and different businesses. So we've had good success, and that's because of Barb Garcia. And I'm going to apologize, Mr. Mayor Hanks. What's the other lady that's from Bonnie? I forgot her last name. Bonnie's going to not be happy about that, but she works with credit collection or credit counseling.
Credit counseling.
And I apologize. Anyway, Barb Garcia and Bonnie are working very hard with many of the community people and banking systems to move this to the next step. So I appreciate their help. It's a great step on how we can do something for economic development in our banking systems, and you'd be surprised how much that helps help people to the next step. So I'd like to thank those two ladies, and I do apologize for not knowing Bonnie's last name tonight. But they're doing a great job, and we thank Mayor Hanks. I mean, he went to our meeting the other day and stepped up and asked the banking people of Rapid City and others to help us with this system, and we've had some good success with his help, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Chair would look for a motion to acknowledge.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Thank you. We have a motion and a second to acknowledge a report. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Number 81B, clarification on salaries in 2010. Alderman Quaker.
I'd just like to use this opportunity to clear up some any confusion that may exist over some statements made at the council meeting a few weeks ago at the adoption of the budget. During the adoption of the budget, I stated my concern over the inclusion of pay increases for elected officials in the 2010 budget. It was then stated that there were not pay increases included in the 2010 budget. Perhaps Mayor Hanks and I misunderstood each other, but I went and checked, and in Cost Center 0101, there are indeed pay increases allocated for elected officials for 2010. Now, I understand that if it's done like it was done last year, that there would probably be a resolution coming along towards the end of the year to formalize this, but the funds for the increase were indeed allocated in the budget. The amount is small, but I disagree in principle at the way this is done. Having the property tax increase separated from the drafted budget was a good move, and salary increases for elected officials should be handled the same way. If there is a resolution coming forward, first of all, I hope it doesn't come forward at all and that there is no increases brought forward. But if there is going to be a resolution coming forward, I would ask that that be announced tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? There again, just for point of clarification, I'll just repeat what I said 2 weeks ago, and that is the fact that the pay, in order for either the mayor or other elected officials to receive a pay increase, it has to be done by a separate resolution. That's why I stated there are no pay increases in the 2010 budget. What is included in the budget is funding. Funding not only for the city council, and yes, it is built in the chance or basically anticipation of whether, or basically in to determine whether or not the city council gives itself a raise. That's solely up to them. But it also includes funding for every city employee in the entire city system. We don't know what they're going to get, if anything, as far as raises, and we include that in the city budget. So I think it's just basically a difference in opinion of definition. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with Alderman Quaker, but we need to get the facts straight. At this point, if nothing else happens, the city council and the mayor will not get a raise. It will take a separate resolution by the city council to enact any kind of an adjustment in our salaries. Jason, is that a fair statement? Okay, very good. Thank you. Alderman Quaker, you can have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And going back to the point is that the basis for the increase was included in the 2010 budget, and that's what I disagree with in principle. It was put in. It should not have been put in the 2010 budget as it was presented to the council. It should have come forward separately, just like the property tax increase. We had a huge amount of discussion on this 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or whenever it was, and I thought it was resolved then. So I'm just hoping that we're not going to see a resolution slipped on an agenda prior to the end of the year to do salary increases. The budget is when that discussion typically takes place, and that should have been separated during the budget discussion and not included in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. There again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but to carry that analogy forward and apply it to the city, Alderman Quaker, you're suggesting that none of the funding for any city employees increases should have been included in the 2010 budget? Well, that's what you're insinuating. You're insinuating that we should not include any increased funding for salaries for either the mayor, which is a city employee, or the city council, and you thought it was inappropriate to include any, quote, any increases in funding for salaries.
And then, can I finish my...
No, I have the floor. You wait till I'm done, sir. And so I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on this. I think we agree on the basic point of the fact that funding was included for an increase in salary for both the mayor and the city council. The only way that that can become effective is by resolution of this council, and the exact same thing was done for the other 731 employees. The funding was included in the salary. Now, I don't know why you would think that we should do it separately for the council, but that has been the practice at least for 12 years since I've been involved. With that, Alderman Quaker, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I believe it should have been done separately per the mayor's veto 2 years ago. The cost center for mayor and council is separate from other cost centers. In no way, shape, or form was I saying not to increase salaries for other employees. What I'm saying is that salary increases for elected officials should not have been included in the 2010 budget. It should have been a separate discussion. What we still haven't had the answer is whether there's going to be a resolution to be brought forward to formalize that increase, but the funding was included in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
As long as I've been on here, it's been a separate resolution, and I didn't see that there was a problem. We could change it then, or you can say, I don't want the raise, or however you want to do it. But Jason, or somebody that's maybe the finance officer, when do we usually do that resolution? Because I know it's right after the budget, usually a couple weeks or a month after the budget.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My recollection is that generally comes forward in October, November. It varies somewhat depending on what else is going on, but generally late fall.
So I guess I either way, we can change that, and I don't see that it's a big issue in the sense that if that comes forward, that resolution as a separate cost center, which is later in a resolution, it's doing the same thing, and it would still be in 2009. So you'd be taking the money away or not taking the raise. I don't think certain council members have the choice of telling the whole council and everybody else they shouldn't take a raise. That's one of the things that they make their choice, and this council makes that choice. Now, after that choice is made, and if everybody decides, or the unanimous vote of the council takes that raise, that doesn't mean you have to take that raise after it's done. That is your choice. Long story short, that is the council's choice, not one council member. So the mayor is saying this right. The resolution is coming forward. It has come forward many a year, and we do or we don't take that raise. That is up to the council. So I understand Mr. Quaker's issue on this in a sense, but it still will come forward, Mr. Quaker, in a way that we can take care of the situation and make sure if people didn't want to take their raises, and as elected officials they didn't have to. So I think we're making a bigger deal of this than we need to. In the long run, I would hope people make a good decision on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I guess, from what I've heard in the conversation is the thought that that shouldn't have been included in the budget. And to me, that's probably isn't really appropriate when you're dealing with the council, because you don't know what the council is going to decide until it's brought forward. Knowing that it's going to come forward in a resolution and the council gets to vote on it as a whole, I think you need to include it in the budget, because otherwise, if things turn, then you have to try and take money from somewhere else to cover it. And so I think from what I've heard, that's the big subject, is it shouldn't have been included in the budget. And I think it's pretty fair to say that you need to. And so I'm okay with it being included in the budget. If we don't take it, then that's the extra $1,500 or $1,200 or however much it ends up being for the year that we can use for detox. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no lights, Chair would look for motion to acknowledge the report. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. 81C, report on Christmas lights. Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
This is really a report on people volunteering and what dates that we are going to start on the Christmas lights this year. October 23rd, we have the Mount Rushmore road group that will be taking care of Wilson Park. So we will be doing Wilson Park, and that will be on a Friday, October 23rd. And you can contact Deb Jensen. They're going to take care of the Christmas lights in Wilson Park. That's going to be awesome with volunteers, and they will feed them lunch that day. October 31st at 8 o'clock, which would be Halley Park. We'll be feeding people breakfast, basically donuts and water and different things. And then we'll be starting in November, putting the star on top of the tower, and we will also be doing downtown. So we'll be good to go, and anybody who would like to volunteer or be a part of this, they can give me a call at 209-1320, and we'll take all the volunteers we can get. It's lots of fun, and it's pretty cool when you're done, because you can kind of see what you've done. We've had lots of kids participate, and they think that's pretty cool as well. So you can bring your kids. It's a lot of fun. Again, Wilson Park and Halley Park this year. We'll have lots of volunteers, and that will be done. And downtown, of course, most of that, the banners and different things are done by the Parks Department and volunteer fire department people. We appreciate them helping us as well with the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate all the hard work that's gone in from the Councilwoman Hadcock and the Christmas lights over the years, and the move to getting the community involved and putting them up. But I had a question for Alderman Hadcock.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I was wondering if she's going to climb on top of that water tower and put that star up this year.
Yeah, do you want to answer that question?
Sure.
Actually,
when we first started it, I did climb on top of the tower, And that's how we ended up having that on top of the tower. But my husband helps the water department and some other volunteers to get up there, and they climb up that 700-foot tower and then end up going about another 10 feet just to connect the star back up there. So I have been up there and couldn't walk for 2 days after I climbed those railings, but it's pretty cool up there, and it's a sight to see. So
Thank you.
Thanks
Anything
again.
else?
But if she was gonna do it, I was gonna go watch, but thanks.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to share my appreciation to Ms. Hadcock for the positive difference that she's made in the community. This started out with raising money for the downtown, new lights and so forth, and then it went to, the star on the water tower, and then Haley Park. Just the positive, it just keeps growing, and now we're talking Wilson Park, that another community groups working on that. It just goes to show when you're consistently doing something year after year that people jump on board. And I just appreciate the work that she's done on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Chair would look for motion to acknowledge. We have a motion and second to acknowledge. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Tech, 2012 update.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin, I guess, on page 4 of the 2012 update. Item number 27 is the Ottawa Powwow Grounds. Action taken, City Council on September 21st committed $150,000 in funds for professional services agreement for design and construction administration. Number 28 is Founders Park. September 8th, 2009, bids were opened and awarded to Skull Construction Services in the amount of $100,000. As I understand, there was a ribbon cutting today on that project. Going down to page 5, item number 29B, the Performing Arts Facility. It's my understanding that a letter of understanding between the Rapid City School District and the Performing Arts groups has been completed. No funding changes to that project. Item 30A, downtown parking, committed funds of $2.8 million rather, for the St. Joe Development Group Master Development Agreement, which was approved at September 21st Council. And the final update would be item number 31, the Soccer Rapid City Complex. Funds of $120,000 were committed to the preliminary design with an agreement with Forefront Design, also on September 21st. That's all I have for the 2012 update.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, discussion? Not, the Chair will look for motion to acknowledge the report. We have a motion and second to acknowledge. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the public hearing items. These are items 83 through 108 inclusive. Chair would look for motion to open the public comment period on items 83 through 108 inclusive, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are during the open public hearing comment period. We do have one speaker request form from a Glenn Elshire, 5140 Twilight Drive, on items 105 and 106. Now, just so you know, we do time this, so you'll have 3 minutes. So if you just go ahead and identify yourself.
Make me nervous.
Yep, that's all right.
My name's
We'll
Glenn.
help you through it.
Do it.
I said we'll help you through it.
My name's Glenn Elshire. I own the property on 105 and 106. We bought this property April of 2006 and put our pet store in it. For the last year and a half, the sales have been going down. We finally realized that this is not a commercial area. Everybody that comes down that road is doing 45 miles an hour going home. We have since had to close our business. It wasn't making the money, couldn't pay the lights. We've had to drop our price $200,000 under the assessed value, $100,000 less than what we bought it for. The only people that we've had that have even been interested in buying it are people that want to put something in there that is in a light industrial. The growth management says that we can't change it to that because it would be a negative impact on the community. We sent out 21 letters to all of the surrounding people over there. Nobody has objected to it. There's just not any commercial sales around us. We've got a garbage company across the street, FedEx, bullet manufacturer a block away, body shops. There's just not stores selling anything. It's not a commercial area. Behind us, we have an area that they designate as a no-use area, which is a sod farm. And by rights, everything I've read, it should be a light industrial area because they're selling bulk products. I've had 3 buyers. I could have sold it 3 times. And each one of the buyers, one of them wanted to put in a machine shop. He's going to manufacture something inside the building. He's going to tear the building down, haul it all to dump, get a new building in there, and have everything inside. And he was shot down because it had to be light industrial. I had another buyer come in there, wanted to use it just as a storage. He was going to put in it lines the inside of water tanks. Said Ace Hardware sells the same products in 5-gallon cans. It's got to be light industrial. I had a lumber company out of Minnesota come in. Couldn't sell it because it had to be light industrial because they were going to sell bulk sand and gravel. I can't get anybody that wants to go in there and commercial because it's not a commercial area. I've exhausted all my resources, and it's come down to you guys either letting me go to light industrial so I can sell it, or we let the bank take it back.
Okay, thank you, sir. I do not have any additional speaker request forms on any items 83 through 108. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to any items 83 through 108 inclusive? If not, we'll move on. We do need to leave the public hearing open at this time. We're on to the continued public hearing consent items. This is items 83 through 86 inclusive. Marcia, do we need to pull any of those off? Okay. Alderman Quaker, could you make a motion? Let's see, the consent calendar is 83 through 86. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the continued consent calendar as per recommendation in the packet. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the public hearing consent items. Chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing for items 83 through 108, please. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the consent public hearing items, items 86 through 87 through 96. Chair will turn to Marcia. Do we need to have any of those pulled, Marcia? Well, hang on a sec. Let's see. We need to pull 87, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, in other words, we've pulled everything with the exception of 88, 89, and 96, correct? Okay. Chair would look for Chair would look for a motion to approve let me ask the question, my apologies. Does anyone from the council wish to have any one of the remaining 3 items pulled from the consent calendar, 88, 89, or 96? If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent public hearing items 86 through 96 inclusive, with the exception of 87, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, and 95. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to item number 87. Let's see. Alderman Quaker, could you please read item number 87, please?
Item 87 is a request by D.C. Scott Land Surveyors for a variance to the subdivision regulations to allow platting half of the right-of-way and to reduce the pavement width from 40 feet to 28 and 32 feet feet respectively, and to waive the requirement to install curb gutter, sidewalk, and sewer along Lane Street as per 16.16 Municipal Code located northwest of the intersection of Lane Street and Deadwood Avenue. Move to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. That takes us to alcohol licenses, number 90. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson. And you could probably take up, it looks like, 1, 2, 3, a number of these with one motion. I believe you can take item number 90, 91, 92, and 94 and 95 all in one motion. 92. Okay, I'm going to let Karen do whatever she wants. How's that?
You going to approve all these?
Yep. Which one did you not
We're on-
want?
we're-
Which one did you not want included, Marcia?
91.
My motion would be to approve items 91, 92, 91 through 95.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
if we could, we need to continue items 90 and 94 and 95 to November 2nd,
Oh, okay, different date.
and then 91 to October 19th, and 92 to October 19th.
And I think you make all that one motion, Karen.
That would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue items number 90 through 95 per the recommendation. Any discussion on that motion?
Not including 93.
Not including number 93. Okay, so we're dealing with 90, 91, 92, 94, 95 per the recommendation. Everyone clear on the motion?
Yep.
We did have a second, correct, Amber? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item number 93, please, Karen.
MG Oil Company, DBA Chances Casino, 1565 Haynes Avenue, and we would, my motion would be to acknowledge the applicant's request to withdraw the application.
We have a motion and second to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar. We're on to the non-consent public hearing items, items number 97 through 108. Karen, if you go ahead and read in item number 97, please.
97, public hearing for the resolution of intent to enter into lease of land with Sauk Rapid City pursuant to South SDCL 915.5.2. My motion is for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. Whoops, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since these items are on the hearing half of the calendar, I would recommend that the motion for 97 and 98 be to acknowledge the hearing that was opened as a part of this, of the hearing half of the calendar.
Okay.
And you want also to include approval of the,
Nope. And
okay. My motion then would be to acknowledge the hearing.
on both item
On
number
both
97,
item
8, and
97 and 98.
okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the public hearings on both item number 97, which was dealing with the lease of land with Sauk Rapid City, and item number 98, which is a public hearing for a lease of land with the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates. Everyone clear on the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We're on to item number 99, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign lease agreement between the city of Rapid City and Sauk Rapid City. My motion is for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this item is probably ready to go. However, Sauk Rapid City's indicated their attorney's been out of town for most of the last week, and they would like to have this continued for 2 weeks just to be sure everybody's on the same page. So my recommendation is continue for 2 weeks.
So moved.
Can I,
Second.
okay.
Okay. We have a substitute motion and a second to continue this item for 2 weeks to the October 19th City Council meeting. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 100, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign lease agreement between the city of Rapid City and the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates. My motion is for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on the motion? Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a hard copy on the dais, and attached to it with a paper clip is a copy of an email from Mr. Ross to Mr. Landine that points out 2 typos that need to be corrected. They are corrected in the hard copy version, so I would request that the motion be clear that it's for the version with the corrections of the 2 typos.
That would be my motion with the corrections.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for, let's see, to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a lease agreement between the city of Rapid City and the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates per the revised version correcting the typos. Correct? Very good. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. There was apparently some discussion on this at Legal and Finance the other day, but are there any additional requirements that ATA is being asked to perform in terms of promises or letters to be given to the city?
Who do you want to request? You want that to Jason?
Either you or Jason.
Okay, Jason, why don't you, and I can chime in here.
I believe the mayor made a request of Saco Rapid City and of ATA to reaffirm their commitment to acknowledge that the city's participation in the projects is limited to the 2012 funds. I think they both had previously made that commitment. I'm not certain if those letters have been delivered to the mayor or not, but it was the same request that was made of Saco Rapid City as was made of ATA, and also as was reflected in the agreement with the Performing Arts Group that the city wasn't going to contribute any more money. So I don't think it's above and beyond.
And I'd like to comment on that. Is that 2 weeks ago in Performing, or 4 weeks ago when Performing Arts came forward with their request, my recollection is I asked the gentleman in charge if they were committing to not asking for future funding, and he said, if I remember right, we'll do our best, but I can't commit future boards into time and eternity. And so I'm paraphrasing what he said, but the reality is that putting a requirement like that in there, although it's something that I think we should do for all 2012 projects consistently, and not just 2 or 3 of them, but that requirement is somewhat akin to a waiver of right to protest on putting in sidewalks. I mean, you still have, even though you sign a waiver, you still have the right to come forward and ask, because that's what representative government is all about. So in reading section 18 on integration, in this particular agreement, it says the parties agree that this agreement constitutes the entire understanding between them, and that there is no other oral or collateral leases or understandings of any kind or character except those contained herein. And I read that to mean that while additional letters might be nice, they can't be required, and I would expect that the signature of this would not be held up for that, and the city mayor's office should require nothing of ATA that was not also required of all the other 2012 projects. We must be fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the most important business that we need to get done is the approval of this lease agreement, which has been pending for some period of time. The discussion that Mr. Quaker has brought forward is not a part of the lease, in my view, and I think it's important that we approve this evening and let this project move forward. I think it has been vetted more than adequately, and the folks that are involved with this project are very committed. This is representative tribal governments throughout the state of South Dakota, sovereign nations who have committed to the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates as individual governments, and they support this organization. And I feel that this is the most important thing we need to do is agree to sign off on this lease agreement. Any of the other issues that are brought forward, in my view, can be discussed at a later time. I think the most important thing is to acknowledge that this is a good project. It has been vetted, and it should be moved forward, and it will so if tonight everyone agrees to supports this agreement. And I would recommend to my colleagues that you do that to allow this very fine organizations to move forward with a project of great impact on our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Alderman Olson's comments, but I also understand that ATA has been being told that they will not receive any more funding without signing this letter. So moving forward on the lease, I agree. I think that, I'm not sure if this letter should be a policy. That's something that the council should vote on.
No.
At some point in time, I'm for moving forward with the lease. I have no problem with that. But if their funding's gonna be held up in reference to another letter that's being required for them to be signed, which in the past nobody else has, I think that the council at some point, as Alderman Olson had suggested, should have a conversation about this. And I would look for Mr. Green for an answer for that, Mr. Mayor.
Could you repeat the question for Mr.
My
Green?
question would be should this not be a policy discussion if we're going to move forward and require ATA to sign an agreement that says they're going to bind the hands of the future people in charge of ATA to receive funding moving forward from 2012, or even the Soccer Association? I think that Alderman Quake would point out a good idea or a good comparison when the Symphony sat right there and said that they're not going to bind anybody's hands. Performing Arts, I'm sorry. That they weren't going to be, their hands weren't be bound for future directors or whoever's involved. So I'm just thinking that maybe this conversation should come forward at another date. I'm fine with that, and moving on with this lease would be fine. So my question is, how do we get past this? If they're being required to sign this before they get any funding, I think it is one and the same. I think we need to put it to bed at one time, and I think it should be a policy discussion. So that'd be my question.
Okay, let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, if you want to have this discussion later on, you can just simply add it to an agenda through the usual process. As for the funding issues, once the council approves this, and Mayor either signs it immediately or it becomes effective without his signature after 10 days. Also, I would point out there's a design contract the council's already approved with the engineers to move this project forward. So my suggestion is approve the lease, and if you want to have a broader policy discussion, add that to a later agenda.
I agree with that. I just want to rest assured that Soccer or ATA will not be held up for not signing that piece of paper. That would be my question for Mr. Green.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Well, I don't think that the lease itself obligates any city funds. Where you'll see the city funds being obligated is once the design is done and there's a contract that comes back to actually build the improvements, and that's true in both cases here.
Okay.
Is that a way of not answering my question?
Nope. I think he answered it. I think what he said was the fact that you can go ahead and approve this, but there's going to be other items that are going to be required for either one of these organizations to move forward that will appear back in front of the city council, and you can have the discussion later at that time.
It wouldn't make any sense to sign a lease if they can't move forward. I just want a simple yes or no. Is this this letter going to stop Soccer and ATA from moving forward with any funding?
No.
Let me interject something here, if I may. First of all, there's been a suggestion that they're not going to be allowed to move forward without signing the letter. The letter was at my request. I asked them to sign that, but I'm not sure exactly where the council got took the position that somehow they weren't going to be allowed to move forward. The conversation I had both with Soccer and with ATA, I thought it was appropriate for them to re-acknowledge their position. Quite honestly, I don't have any real concerns because in looking back at the documentation, we have this identical letter from ATA from 2005. The city council and the mayor at the time, Jim Shaw, required a letter from ATA which basically stated, and it was signed by Daphne Cook, that stated that they understood that the total amount of the city's obligation was basically the land and basically the $812,000. We have the letter in the file. To answer your question, is there anything that could stop forward? The answer is no. It will go forward, but I also want to be very clear as far as the procedure, because when things come forward, I can do one of three things. I can sign it, I can not sign it, and it can become effective 10 days after that, or I can veto it. I've never suggested that I would ever veto it, never had any intention of doing that, and having discovered the fact that we already have letters in the file, quite honestly, I really don't, it doesn't concern me whether or not either one of these associations sign a letter or not. We've had discussion in public. Everyone acknowledges exactly what the agreement was. The discussion during the 2012 meetings were very clear when the money was first assigned was the fact that they had to bring a business plan, and they also understood, and I'm going to see if I can quote Malcolm, it was repeated time after time after time that this was the money they were going to get and no more. Now, having said that, there's nothing in that policy that says any organization can come back and ask for money in the future. You know, we can't restrict it. They can always come back. But I think the point I was trying to drive home, both to Saco Rapid City and to the Ottawa folks, was the fact that this was the agreement through 2012. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified, because I didn't want the city moving forward and not having both parties absolutely certain of what the agreement was. I didn't want there to be any confusion. I hope that helped clarify.
Oh, it helped me a lot. Simple answer. That's what I was looking for. I appreciate it. We aren't privy to what's in the files and what it wasn't in the file. All we understand is at the point in time where we were at, I wanted to assure these people tonight, when we sign this lease moving forward, we're all comfortable. We believe in the projects. They're going to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Sometimes I think we have some crazy conversations up here because we go through the same thing over and over again. I remember a couple council members doing the same thing the mayor was trying to bring forward, is to make sure that people were on board that we didn't have any more money for funding. And council members have done that, so if our mayor does that, that's a little bit different. I think we've done that many a times, but I'm going to tell you too, we said that to Wilderness Park area on top of the hill skyline many a times. What came forth is another 40,000 later. So that wasn't from the mayor, that was from the city council members. Keep repeating, and we put it in the lease and we put it in the agreements, and we did the opposite anyway, and we came back and gave money. So I don't know where this conversation is going, but there is no discrimination against anybody on this policy or procedure. The contracts and the verbal agreements that this council and this mayor always says is we try to hold people's feet to the fire, and he's just doing what we do best. We're trying to hold a contract that would work for both parties. So Mr. Kroger said it best. We can say and put down contracts and verbal agreements all we want, but the bottom line is we usually support the projects, we support the people, and it comes back, and if they need help and we have extra funding in 2012, we let them have it. So all this, I think, conversation sometimes is null and void. We're here to help people in this community and get the job done. So that's the bottom line, and I don't think anybody's going to have a problem get more funding in a sense if we have the funding. If we don't, it's cut dry. So I think everybody does support any 2012 project on there that's on this council, and that's the bottom line.
Okay. Thank you. And let's try and reel the conversation in just a little bit. If we can. Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, the motion on the floor is to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign a lease agreement between the City of Rapid City and the Alliance of Tribal Tourism Advocates.
So you're reeling me in. That's what you're doing.
I'm trying real hard.
You know, first of all, I think this council supports both ADA and the soccer complex, and they've worked hard with ADA and Daphne and Tim. And so I think where this come from, and this council's been very, very strict in saying that, you know, this is what you get, no more, but they don't say you can't come back. And I think where this all come from, and, you know, most of the council wasn't at the meeting with ADA, but, you know, we had several people stood up and were talking about subsidizing, and gave long speeches on it. And I think that's where this come across as far as reiterating what was actually said and done. You know, the actual 2012 application file, I think I had Kay put in the caucus room, so it's in there if anybody wants to look at it. It's been laying there for about 3 months, but I mean, and I've looked at the soccer complex, I got that one at home, they all have that in there. So I mean, it's just a matter of, I think that's where the confusion come across, is we had some people at that meeting who very adamantly said we should be subsidizing and made great speeches on it. We needed, and I think the mayor felt he needed to reiterate what the policy said and what the 2012 committee said. And I think that's just a simple way to put it. It wasn't out discriminate against any one group or any one person. It was just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. And just there again, point of clarification, I just want to make sure everyone knows that the folks that were advocating for subsidies were not from ATA. It was folks from the audience, so.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Let's go to Alderwoman Karen Olson, and then we're going to get to a vote here.
Thanks, Lloyd. I agree with, I think what you've offered an explanation that was what I was going to say. And I will say this. I know that any decision we make today that I personally vote on, it doesn't hold any future councils on anything. I understand that. And so as the councils change and membership changes, I mean, I just have no ability to affect that. And I think what we do today is our best judgment, and I agree with Lloyd, and I think this should be approved.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign the lease agreement. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 101, please.
Okay. A request by the City of Rapid City for an amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from low-density residential to general commercial on property located west of Valley Drive and north of South Dakota Highway 44.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? It's item 101. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Item 102, a request by...
Marcia wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we've already acted. Marcia, what was it?
Actually, on items 101, 102, 103, and 104, I need to make you aware that there's a slight change from the direction you gave us at the last meeting, and that is this area here is identified as general
Okay,
commercial.
before we get too far, if we're going to take this up, we need to actually make a motion to reconsider. We don't have this on the floor.
Okay.
Is there a motion to reconsider item 101, please?
So move.
We have a motion and a second for reconsideration of item 101. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 101, let's get a motion on the floor, please. Marcia, what's your recommendation for a
Approve.
motion?
Staff's recommending approval
So
As written.
as written, which is different than the direction the council gave us 2 weeks ago. And I need to make you aware of that.
Because of that small change in that piece between general commercial.
Correct. The applicants asked that this be general commercial and not light industrial as you directed previously, and I wanted to make sure you were aware that that was the action that was coming forward.
Okay, that would be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval as per the link, correct?
Correct.
Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'd just like to thank Marcia and her staff for all the work they've done on this to make this accommodate the people as well as take care of the future land use there. So thank you, Marcia, for all your work and your people on your growth management to help people out and make it right. So I appreciate your help, ma'am.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for Mr. Nielsen. Is this his property here, Marcia?
Yes, it is.
That's correct in the commercial, the change? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval as per the recommendation on the linked agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. 102, please.
A request by the City of Rapid City for an amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from low-density residential to light industrial with a planned industrial development on property located west of Valley Drive and north of South Dakota Highway 44. My motion would be approved with revised legal description.
We have a motion and a second to approve with revised legal descriptions. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. The link says the recommendation is to deny. The writing on the agenda says recommend approval. So can you help me out on what's changed?
Marcia?
Again, the council directed that we move forward and bring forward to you the changes that you had asked for, and so staff has worked through those with the applicant. So even though the Planning Commission recommended denial, based on your direction to us and working through those legals, we're recommending that this be approved with a revised legal description. That's to conform to the direction the council gave us 2 weeks ago.
Understood. So the concern of the adjacent landowners hasn't changed. They still have the same position that they did 2 weeks ago, in your understanding?
I believe that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Further discussion. Motion on the floor is for approval with revised legal description. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes with 1 no from Alderman Sam Quaker. Item 103, please.
Second reading ordinance number 5527, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, revising the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to general commercial district on land located west of Valley Drive and north of South Dakota Highway 44. Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 104, please.
Second reading ordinance number 5529, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of the chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for a rezoning from no-use district to light industrial district on property located in located west of Valley Drive and north of South Dakota Highway 44. And I yield to the floor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval with the revised legal description. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go on. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
No.
Let's do a roll call, please.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Olson,
No.
Wyffenbach,
Aye.
Roger, Hadcock, Wah,
Aye.
Martinson,
Aye.
Spiker.
No.
That is 6-2.
6-2, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 105, please.
Second reading ordinance number 5543, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Glenn A. Alshire for a rezoning from general commercial district, excuse me, to light industrial district on property located at 2507 East St. Patrick Street. My motion would be to deny.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for denial. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Wyffenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I drive by this property. I don't know, I can't even count how many times I drive by this property. Now, I'd be encouraged for us to maybe not deny this, but continue to give an opportunity to look at this and see what alternatives we have. I mean, the area in there is challenged, to say the least. Across the street's challenged, his property's challenged, around him's challenged. I'm not sure how we'd go about this, but I think that just denying this is going to be a little bit of a destructive type of approach. If we maybe could continue this, give the applicant an opportunity to maybe discuss with the city staff or someone how they can better make this work for a future land use that makes sense. It's a tough area over there. Right across the street from him is waste management with huge garbage trucks and giant fences and stuff blowing all over the place. And to try to put general commercial in there, I don't know what you could put in there. And I guess they're suggesting to deny it here, and I would suggest what can we do with it? I mean, it's been that way for a long time, and it's a tough situation as it sits. And if we just deny this tonight, we're not making this situation any better. And this is a perfect opportunity here to look at a property inside the city limits that needs some help. We've done, over the years since I've been on this council and prior to this council, we've created a lot of easy steps in growing our city, and we haven't been taking advantage of opportunities to infill within our city. And if we leave this general commercial, I believe this is going to be an eyesore for the next 20 years. And I'm not sure how we go about this, but I guess I would at least like to make a motion to continue this for 30 days. If I could get someone to second that, and maybe somebody else has some input, unless we just want to leave it like it is. And thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded to continue for 30 days. Further discussion, I'll recognize Marcia Elkins.
If the motion maker would continue it to a date specific so we don't have to re-advertise, I believe that would be the November 2nd
city council meeting?
My computer went on November 2nd?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Continue
Motions
to
to
November
con-
2nd to give
motions
the
to
applicant an
continue-
opportunity to explore some more options.
November 2nd, to give the applicant opportunity to explore some different options.
Thank you.
Further discussion, I'll recognize Alderwoman Karen Gunderson Olson.
I'll support the continuation motion.
Thank you, Karen. I'm next on the list, but I'll go on down the list. Next, I'll recognize Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'm in favor of the continuance, but I'm also looking on here and there's, I don't know if this is the old future land use or what, but if you had to look on this map and figure out what is what, there's it has no use all the way around this Pennington County.
Yep.
We have ended up annexing these areas in, and based on what I've seen out there, I guess I would like to know with those businesses that are out there, would they be classified that are around there, would they be classified as light industrial or commercial? Because if you look at this map, you're not gonna have any idea. So we could be saying, well, we want this general commercial, but when you're looking on a map and what we just annexed in, they could be light industrial. So we could be putting commercial here when the whole thing around it could be light industrial. So I'd like to know what those businesses that we have annexed in and what we put there, if they're light industrial or commercial, before I make this decision as well. So maybe if we could do that with the growth management or the future land use, to see what those businesses, what they think it should be and what the businesses are now. Because that would make my decision on determining if this should be light industrial or commercial. Because like the gentleman said, if that area is doing what they are around there for businesses, it sounds like it is already more light industrial. And maybe I'm wrong, but I guess I would like in 30 days or whenever we can get this forward to see what those businesses are. I don't know if we have to make that a motion or if we can just ask Marcia kind of to see. I appreciate that, Marcia, if we could do that, because I don't know where it was. Anyway, here's the other thing. With Pennington County and us annexing in, I think we need a updated version on our computers and for the community as well. These future land use are, I don't know how old they are, but they're pretty old, and you can't get online and determine, even if you're looking at these properties, what that area is. So, do you have an updated version, Marcia? Can I ask
That's the
that?
item that's on the wall right now. I'm not sure what you're looking at. I'm suspecting you're looking at a zoning map. But we'll
Right.
follow up with you, and staff will be glad to provide that information when this comes back to you in 30 days.
Okay, just the zoning and then what it would be classified if you had to classify those businesses in that area that are in there right now. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Ms. Hadcock. Next, I'll reckon, the motion on the floor is to continue to the November 2nd council meeting to give the applicant more time to explore options. Is the motion maker, did 105 and 106?
105 and 106, yes.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. Further discussion, I'll recognize Alderwoman Patty Martinson.
Yes, thank you. I am in support of the motion. I did drive by that area myself, and I did notice that in the Open Bible Center there is a playground behind it. So that would be my concern by changing this to light industrial, that it could be a potential danger to the children in the Open Bible Center. I would like to see that addressed if there are going to be changes made to the zoning.
Thank you, Ms. Martinson. Further discussion, we'll recognize Alderman Ron Wyffenbach. Oh, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, nothing's been discussed about what would happen. I'm just suggesting that we look at this and don't bury our head in the sand and say we don't got a problem there, because we got a problem there. That we got an opportunity to work with these people and infill within the city. It's always easy to build outside the city because nothing's going on. But we look at these little spot areas in our city, we've annexed it in, we don't really have a good plan over there. And I understand but if you look across the street from there, I mean, there's big giant garbage trucks driving up and down too that could run over little kids just as easy. So I'm just saying that let's just look at it, let's take some time and see if we can do this right. If we just deny this and send him on his way, that doesn't do him any good. Or doesn't do the taxpayers of the city any good. So that's just it. That's all I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitebach. Next, further discussion, recognize Alderwoman Karen Gunderson Olson.
Well, I call the question.
Any objections to calling the question? Hearing none? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We're on to what? Item 107.
Item 107, please.
Don't we have to vote on the question?
No. There was no objection to calling the question, so we went to the original motion. The vote was on the original motion. Okay, item 107, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance.
Oh, Mike.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for the installation of curb, gutter, water, and sewer along South Dakota Highway 44, and to install sewer along Elkhart Road, Kenosha Road, and Canterbury Road as they abut Lot 5 of Aspen Estates in property located at 7800 Elkhart Road. Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 108, please.
A request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Walter J. Bradsky for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install curb, gutter, street light, conduit, water, and sewer along South Dakota Highway 44, to waive the requirement to install curb, gutter, street light, conduit, water, sewer, to reduce the pavement width from 24 feet to 22 feet, and Canterbury Road as per Chapter 16.16 in the Rapid City Municipal Code on land legally described as Lot 5 of Aspen Estates, located at 7800 Elkhart Road. My motion would be to approve in part with stipulations and deny in part as per the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve in part with stipulations and to deny in part per the Planning Commission's recommendation. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Can I ask Marcia a question, please?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. The only thing I have is why is there a variance to the subdivision on the install light conduit and on Highway 44 denied without prejudice instead of what we usually do is just add it all together with the approval, I guess is a good way to put it.
Marcia?
I believe the reason is that because on the state highway, that is an exception, not a variance.
Okay. That's what I forgot when I read it.
Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay, a motion on the floor is to approve in part with stipulations, deny in part per the Planning Commission's recommendations. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Preston, the bill list, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The bill list totals $5,931,033.21. There are no additions or changes.
We have a motion and a second to approve the bill list for a total of $5,931,033.21. No additions. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Green, do we have an executive session?
We do, and it would be for the purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2.
Okay. Could we have a motion, please? Okay, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to go into executive session for the purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're in executive session. Thank you.